Let me take you back to a time when I was just a kid, no older than 8 or 9, living in a small, creaky house with my family. My mom, my dad, my little sister, and I. We all slept in the same room, on one big bed, pushed up against the wall. It wasn't fancy, just a cramped little space, with peeling wallpaper, a single window that rattled when the wind blew, and an old wooden floor that groaned under every step. The room always felt heavy, like it held secrets we weren't supposed to know. But as a kid, you don't think about those things. You just try to sleep and hope the night passes quietly. It was one of those nights, pitch black, the kind of dark that swallows everything, where the only sounds were the soft snores of my family and the occasional creak of the house settling. I don't know what woke me up. Maybe it was a noise. Maybe it was just a feeling. But my eyes snapped open, and I lay there, frozen, staring into the darkness. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on my chest, and I couldn't shake the sense that something was watching me. That's when I saw him, at the far edge of the room, where the shadows pooled the deepest. A figure stood, still as if part of the darkness itself. He didn't move. He simply waited for me to look. The moon slipped through the cracked blinds and barely touched him, enough to show that something about his face was wrong. It wasn't the shape you expect. It looked stretched, like someone had smoothed it too tight, and the smile, too wide, the kind that felt carved into his skin. His teeth caught the light, uneven and too bright. His eyes fixed on me, steady and unblinking, and for a moment, time narrowed down to that single, silent stare. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might burst out of my chest. I wanted to scream, to call out for my dad, but my voice was stuck, like something was choking me from the inside. All I could do was stare back at that thing, that man, smiling at me from the shadows. Finally, I found my voice. "Dad!" I screamed, my voice cracking with panic. "Dad, there's someone in the room." My dad jolted awake, fumbling in the dark as my mom and sister stirred beside him. "What? What's wrong?" he asked, his voice groggy but laced with concern. "There's a man." I pointed toward the corner, my hand trembling. "He's right there. He's looking at me." My dad squinted into the darkness, his eyes scanning the room. My mom flicked on the bedside lamp, casting a weak, yellow glow across the walls. The shadows shifted, and for a moment, I thought I saw the figure move, just a twitch, like he was stepping back into the dark. But when I looked again, he was gone. The corner was empty. Just the same old dresser, the same cracked mirror, the same faded wallpaper. "There's nothing there, kiddo," my dad said, rubbing his eyes. "You probably just had a bad dream." "It wasn't a dream," I insisted, my voice shaking. "He was right there. I saw him. He was smiling at me." My mom pulled me close, her arms warm, but not enough to stop the chill running down my spine. "It's okay, honey," she said softly. "Sometimes our eyes play tricks on us in the dark. Let's say a prayer, all right? That'll keep you safe." They made me recite a prayer, the words tumbling out of my mouth as I kept glancing toward the corner, half expecting that smile to reappear. When we finished, my dad turned off the light, plunging the room back into darkness. "Go back to sleep," he said. "It's just us here." But I couldn't sleep. I lay there, my eyes wide open, staring into the black, Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside made my heart jump. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a dream like they said. But deep down, I knew what I saw. That face, that smile, it wasn't human. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe 15, when I felt it again. That heavy, suffocating feeling like the air itself was watching me. I didn't want to look. I told myself not to, but my eyes betrayed me, drifting toward the corner of the room. He was back. The man was standing there again, in the exact same spot, as if he'd never left. His stretched, unnatural face was clearer now, like the darkness was parting just to show me every detail. His skin looked pale, almost gray, like it hadn't seen the sun in years. His eyes were too big, too dark, and they gleamed with something wrong. And that smile, it was wider now, splitting his muzzle almost ear to ear, his teeth sharp and uneven like they didn't belong in his mouth. He wasn't moving, wasn't making a sound, but I could feel him. It was like his presence was crawling into my head, whispering things I couldn't quite hear. "Dad!" I screamed again, louder this time, my voice raw with terror. "He's back! He's right there!" This time my whole family woke up. My sister started crying, clutching her blanket, and my mom was already reaching for the lamp. My dad grabbed a flashlight from the nightstand and swung it toward the corner. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating every inch of the room. The dresser, the mirror, the walls. Nothing. No man, no figure, just an empty corner. "Where?" my dad demanded, his voice sharp now. "Where is he?" I pointed, my hand shaking so bad I could barely keep it still. "Right there! He was right there, I swear!" My dad got out of bed, his flashlight sweeping across the room, as he checked every corner, every shadow. My mom pulled my sister and me close, whispering for us to stay calm. We searched the whole room, under the bed, behind the dresser, even inside the tiny closet with its sagging door. Nothing. No sign of anyone. No footprints on the dusty floor. No marks on the walls. Nothing out of place. "He was there," I kept saying, my voice breaking. "I saw him. I'm not lying." I know," my mom said, stroking my hair. "It's okay. It's over now." But it wasn't over. Not for me. We went back to bed. The light left on this time to keep the shadows at bay. My dad sat up for a while, keeping watch, but eventually he dozed off. My mom and sister fell back asleep too, their breathing slow and steady, but I couldn't close my eyes. I kept staring at that corner, waiting, dreading that he'd come back. He didn't. Not that night, at least. The rest of the night passed in silence, and by morning, the room felt normal again, like the sun had chased away whatever had been there. My parents didn't talk about it much after that. They chalked it up to a kid's overactive imagination, maybe a nightmare that felt too real. But I know what I saw. That face, that smile. It's burned into my memory, as vivid now as it was back then. Years later, I brought it up to my dad, asking if he remembered that night. He got quiet for a moment, his face tightening. "Yeah," he said finally. "I remember. But let's not talk about it, okay?" That was it. He wouldn't say more, and I didn't push him. But the way he looked at me, the way his voice dropped, it made me wonder if he'd seen something too. Something he didn't want to admit. I've never seen that man again. Not in that house. Not anywhere else. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, when the house is too quiet and the shadows feel too deep, I get that same feeling, that heavy, suffocating sense that something's watching, and I can't help but wonder if he's still out there, waiting for the right moment to step out of the shadows with that same twisted, impossible smile. Let me take you back to 1990, a time when the world felt a little slower, a little quieter, but no less unsettling. I was just a teenager, caught up in the throes of young love, helping my girlfriend Kathy and her family pack up their lives as they prepared to move out of state. The recession had hit hard, and her dad had landed a job offer he couldn't turn down, a fresh start halfway across the country. Their house, a sprawling four-bedroom ranch-style home in the older part of town, was left behind, empty and waiting to be sold. It was a nice place, with a massive lot, a detached garage, and a long driveway where they'd park their boat and RV. A huge oak tree loomed out front, its gnarled branches casting long shadows over the house, while a few smaller trees, including an orange tree, dotted the backyard. The neighbors weren't too close, giving the place an isolated feel, like it was cut off from the rest of the world. I'd been helping them pack for days, hauling boxes and taping up their lives. One afternoon, as the moving truck pulled away, Kathy's parents pulled me aside to the front porch. Her dad, a gruff but kind man, looked at me with a seriousness I wasn't used to. "Son," he said, "can I trust you with something important?" I nodded, eager to help. They'd always been good to me, treated me like family. He explained that the house was on the market, but with the recession, empty homes were prime targets for break-ins. People stealing appliances, squatting, or worse. He handed me a key, its cold metal heavy in my hand. "Could you stop by every few days? Check on the place, maybe clean it up a bit? And if you're up for it, stay a night or two, just so it doesn't look abandoned." He looked worried, his eyes darting to the street. "The neighbor across the way, the only one I trust, is on vacation. It'll be a while before he's back." I told him not to worry, that I'd take care of everything. He tried to hand me some cash, but I waved it off. They were going through enough. "I got this," I said. He gave me a number, Kathy's grandmother's landline, since cell phones back then were spotty at best, and told me to call if anything came up. With that, they left, and I was alone with the responsibility of watching over their empty house. The first few days were uneventful. I'd swing by after school, sweeping the kitchen, scrubbing the bathrooms, vacuuming the dusty carpets. The house felt strange without their furniture, like a shell of what it used to be. The rooms echoed with every step, and the air carried a faint, musty smell, like the house was already forgetting its owners. The first night I decided to stay over was a Friday. I told my parents I'd be working late and planned to head home in the morning. All that was left in the house was a cot, a small radio, and a couple of lamps. I set up in Kathy's old room, partly because I missed her, partly because it felt like the safest place in the house. Her room was small, with faded floral wallpaper and a single window overlooking the backyard. I left the kitchen light on, the front bathroom light on, and tuned the radio to a low hum to keep me company. I fell asleep to the soft crackle of music bundled in my sleeping bag, but sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up, my breath catching in my throat. The room was freezing. Not just chilly, but a bone-deep cold, like I'd been locked in a walk-in freezer. It was fall, sure, but this wasn't normal. The air felt wrong, like it was coming from somewhere else, some unnatural source. My teeth chattered as I stumbled out of the cot, fumbling for the heater. I flipped it on, the old unit groaning to life, and crawled back under my sleeping bag, pulling it tight around me. The cold lingered, though, like it was clinging to me. I didn't sleep much after that. The next day, I mentioned it to a friend, joking about how cold it got. He raised an eyebrow. Cold? Dude, it was like 60 degrees last night. I brushed it off, but something about his words stuck with me. That night, I didn't go back. I told myself I was just busy, but deep down, I wasn't eager to spend another night in that house. A few days later, on a Thursday, I decided to stay over again. I had school the next morning, so I planned my route from the house, which was farther from my school than my own place. I got there late, just as the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky a deep, bruised purple. This time, I brought a little black and white camping TV with bunny ears, hoping for some distraction. Kathy's room didn't pick up a signal, so I moved to the den, a weird add-on room that felt like it didn't quite belong to the house. It had big windows and a sliding glass door to the backyard, making it feel exposed, like the night was pressing in from all sides. I set up my cot, poured some hot chocolate from a thermos, and fiddled with the TV until I got a fuzzy signal. I was half watching some sitcom when I started to doze off, the hum of the TV lulling me to sleep. Then, out of nowhere, a noise snapped me awake. It came from the other side of the house, a sharp, scraping sound, like a broom handle sliding down a wall after being knocked over. My heart jumped into my throat. I sat up, straining to listen. The house was silent again, but the air felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. I grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the kitchen, my footsteps echoing in the empty house. The pantry door was closed, the broom and mop still upright inside. Nothing was out of place. I told myself it was nothing, just the house settling, but my hands were shaking. I headed to the bathroom to splash water on my face, trying to calm my nerves. As I stood at the sink, I heard it, a whisper, not just a sound, but words, low and indistinct, like someone was muttering just behind me. I froze, my eyes darting to the mirror. The hallway reflected back, empty and dark. I spun around, but no one was there. Kathy's dad's words about break-ins flashed in my mind. What if someone was in the house? I ran through the rooms, flipping on every light I could find. The porch light, the backyard floodlight, anything to chase away the shadows. I checked every door, every window. Everything was locked tight. No signs of anyone. Breathing hard, I went back to the den, ready to grab my stuff and leave. That's when I noticed the TV. It was off. Not just a bad signal, completely off. The screen black and silent. I knew I'd left it on. My stomach twisted. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the cot, flashlight in hand, jumping at every and groan of the house. By morning, I was exhausted, my nerves shot. At school, I told a couple of friends what happened. They were eager to come check it out, maybe turn it into a ghost hunting adventure, but I shut it down. I'd promised Kathy's dad no visitors, and I wasn't about to break my word, no matter how freaked out I was. That Sunday, Kathy called me at home. Her voice was a lifeline, pulling me back to normalcy as she talked about their road trip. But I must have sounded off, because she paused and said, "Oh, hey, what's wrong? Besides missing me?" I hesitated. I didn't want to sound like a scared kid, but I told her about the cold in her room, the scraping noise, the whisper, the TV turning off. There was a long silence on the other end. Then she said, "Yeah, I kind of figured you'd find out." "Find out what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. She sighed. "Remember how I never liked being home alone? How I'd call you over when my parents were out? It's not just me being clingy. That house, it's not right. We've heard things, seen things. When I was little, I'd run to my parents' room and sleep on the floor because I swore something was watching me from the hallway. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want you to think I was crazy," she said. "Besides, it's not like it happens all the time, just sometimes." I was floored. She'd known something was off about that house and didn't warn me. Before I could say more, she added, "Oh, my dad said you don't have to stay overnight anymore. The neighbor across the street is back from vacation. He'll keep an eye on things at night. But could you still check in during the day?" Relief washed over me, but it was tinged with unease. I kept up my visits, but only in daylight, when the house felt less alive, less watchful. As fall turned to winter, the days got shorter, and one evening, I got to the house after 7 p.m. It was already dark, the oak tree's branches clawing at the sky. I unlocked the front door, flipped on the hall light, and headed to the bathroom. As I stood at the toilet, facing the long mirror that stretched across the wall, I caught movement in the reflection. A dark shape, fast and blurry, darting across the hallway behind me. "Hello?" I shouted, spinning around. The hallway was empty, the light casting long, steady shadows. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't bother checking the rest of the house. I grabbed my keys, left the bathroom and hall lights on, and bolted out the door, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. A day later, Kathy's dad called. "Hey, did you leave some lights on last night? The neighbor said he saw someone inside around 11 p.m., and the lights were on." My blood ran cold. "That wasn't me," I said. "I was there around 7, but I left right after." He paused, then said, "All right, probably just the neighbor getting the time wrong." But his voice didn't sound convinced. I went back a few more times, always in broad daylight, my visits quick and cautious. Eventually, the realtor sold the house to some company that bought up properties. The day I handed over the key was the day I felt like I could finally breathe again. I never went back to that house, but the memory of those nights, the cold, the whispers, the shadow in the mirror, still haunts me. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I get that same feeling, like something's just out of sight, waiting, and I can't help but wonder if whatever was in that house is still there. This story takes me back to when I was 13, in the early 2000s, a time when life felt simpler, but the nights could still hold secrets that linger with you for years. My best friend, Jake, lived in a small 2-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. His parents owned the place, along with the property next door where they stayed most nights. Jake's older brother, Matt, who was in his early 20s, lived in a beat-up trailer parked in the backyard of Jake's house. This setup left Jake and me pretty much unsupervised whenever I stayed over, free to do whatever we wanted, play video games, raid the fridge, or just mess around without anyone breathing down our necks. It was the kind of freedom every kid dreams of. But that night, freedom came with something else, something I'll never forget. It was a warm summer evening, the kind where the air feels thick and the cicadas hum like a distant warning. Jake and I had spent most of the day goofing off, riding bikes around the neighborhood, and by nightfall, we ended up in Matt's trailer out back. The trailer was a cramped, cluttered space, old posters peeling off the walls, a sagging couch, and a small TV flickering with some action movie Matt was half watching. The air smelled of stale cigarette smoke and cheap air freshener, and a single bulb cast a dim, yellowish glow over everything. We were sprawled out, laughing, talking about nothing important, when I realized I was parched. I'm going to grab a drink, I said, standing up and heading toward the house. The backyard was dark, the only light coming from the trailer's windows, and a faint porch light flickering by the back door. The grass crunched under my sneakers as I crossed the yard, the hum of the cicadas growing louder, almost oppressive. The house loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged against the starry sky. It was an old place, with creaky wooden floors and windows that rattled in the wind. Nothing about it felt off at the time, just a normal house, quiet and empty. I pushed open the front door, the hinges letting out a low groan that echoed through the stillness. The living room was dark, lit only by a sliver of moonlight slipping through the curtains. I flipped on the light switch, expecting the room to feel familiar, like it always did when I hung out with Jake. But as the fluorescent bulb buzzed to life, my eyes caught something that made my heart skip a beat. There, in the middle of the living room floor, was a little boy. He couldn't have been older than 6 or 7, kneeling on the worn carpet, surrounded by a scattering of toy trucks and cars. His small hands moved them back and forth, making soft vroom vroom sounds under his breath. He had messy brown hair, a striped t-shirt, and a focused look, like he was lost in his own world. The scene felt so normal, like I'd walked in on a younger sibling playing. He glanced over his shoulder at me, his eyes locking with mine for a brief moment. They were big, dark, and strangely calm, like he wasn't surprised to see me at all. I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was a cousin or a neighbor's kid I hadn't met. I gave him a quick nod and walked past him to the kitchen, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. The kitchen was just off the living room, separated by a half wall. I opened the fridge, the cold air hitting my face as I grabbed a can of Mountain Dew, the familiar green logo glinting under the light. The house was quiet, save for the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards settling. I popped the tab, took a sip, and headed back out, glancing at the kid as I passed. He was still there, playing with his toys, not paying me any mind. I shrugged it off and stepped back into the night, the door creaking shut behind me. Back in the trailer, Jake and Matt were still lounging, the TV now playing some late-night infomercial. I plopped down on the couch, the Mountain Dew cold in my hand. "Hey, Jake," I said casually. "Who's the kid in the house? The one playing with trucks?" Jake's face went blank, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" "You know, the little boy in the living room," I said, taking another sip. "Looks just like you, man. Same hair, same face. He was messing around with some toy cars." Matt sat up, his cigarette pausing halfway to his mouth. Jake's expression shifted from confusion to something else. Shock, maybe fear. "Dude," he said, his voice low. "There's no one else here. It's just us and Matt. Mom and Dad are next door." I laughed. thinking he was messing with me. Come on, man, I saw him. Little kid, maybe 6, playing on the floor. Looked like your mini-me. Jake didn't laugh. He stood up, his face pale, and grabbed a framed photo from a shelf in the trailer. It was an old picture, the colors faded, showing a young boy with messy brown hair and a wide grin, holding a toy truck. This him? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at the photo, and my stomach dropped. It was the kid. Same hair, same striped shirt, same calm, dark eyes. Yeah, I said, my mouth dry. That's him. Jake swallowed hard, his eyes locked on the photo. That's my little brother, Tommy. He died 3 years ago. Car accident. The air in the trailer felt like it thickened, pressing down on us. Matt stubbed out his cigarette, his hands shaking slightly. You sure you saw him? He asked, his voice rough. You're not screwing around. I'm not screwing around, I snapped, my heart pounding. He was right there, in the living room, playing with his toys. He looked at me, man. We made eye contact. Jake sat down heavily, staring at the floor. Tommy used to love playing with those trucks, he said quietly. He'd spend hours in the living room, making those little engine noises. Sometimes I still hear them, late at night. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, like the temperature in the trailer had dropped 10 degrees. The cicadas outside seemed louder now, their hum filling the silence. I tried to process what I'd just heard. I'd seen a kid, real as anything, solid as Jake, sitting next to me. He wasn't threatening, wasn't scary, just there. But the fact that he wasn't supposed to be there, that he couldn't be there, made my skin crawl. We didn't go back to the house that night. We stayed in the trailer, the TV's static glow casting flickering shadows on the walls. None of us slept much. I kept replaying the moment in my head. The way Tommy had looked at me, his calm, unblinking eyes, like he knew something I didn't. Why had he shown himself to me? Why didn't he react? Didn't say anything? Didn't do anything? Was he just there, stuck in some loop of his past? Or was there something else? Something he wanted me to know? The next morning, I left Jake's place as soon as the sun was up, the house looming silently behind me. I didn't go inside again. Didn't want to. Jake never brought it up after that, and I didn't either. But even now, 23 years later, that moment haunts me. I can still see Tommy's face, those dark eyes locking with mine, that faint, knowing look. I wonder if he's still there, in that house, playing with his trucks, waiting for someone else to walk through the door. And I can't shake the feeling that, wherever he is, he's still watching.